Chapter 3. "You know you would have to be an idiot to be caught here," said the voice behind me, and I nearly fell out of the tree branch where I perched. I'd been skipping school, again, a regular occurrence now that I was 13. This time during a career fair where parents of the children arrived to show us opportunities for our futures. Jim, the short kid with glasses held together by tape so old it had started to dry rot, had turned a bright red when his father pulled the garbage truck into the school lot like a massive show and tell. "You see here," said his father, his new school-provided name tag reading Jim, already tarnished with a fleck of grease. "Every day we cart the trash away. That trash goes to the calorie exchanger teams, typically born near peat swamp regions, who convert what they can to petrol, which keeps the lights on, kiddos. So next time you think of garbage, remember what you throw away always has value." The class nodded, several staring towards the next location we would be herded to by Mrs. Whip, a low-level distraction attenuator. Of course, she had never received any training for a power so minimal, but she was a saturant, so she didn't have to. For saturants, powers were involuntary. They simply flowed from the wielder like a type of charisma that could only be slightly enhanced with focus. Turning right, I saw the secretary career location was next, and as we walked over, one of the parents' heads snapped up as his face twitched. "Kids! Oh, kids! Futures! You have futures!" he said, and his eyes jumped rapidly between each of us, yet never seemed to focus properly on any of our faces. This was Jessica's father, and she forced an encouraging smile as he entered a silence too many seconds long to be acceptable, his face strained as he fought for his next words. "Oh, yes, futures. As a secretary, you are one of the most well paid out of all—" He stopped, entering another silence, and Jessica spoke up, biting her lip. "Go on, Daddy. Out of all the regulars," she prompted. And his face lit up, having found another train of thought as he continued, blinking several times in rapid succession. "Like anyone would take that job," whispered Stephen from next to me. One of the children Mrs. Whip's effect seemed to have no effect on, and who lived in an apartment several doors down from my own. "Working for the specials, writing down every word at their important meetings, then having appointments with a memory drain at the end of each month to make sure you don't retain any information. Well, by the looks of this one, he must work for someone really important. I bet they memory drain him every day." I shook my head as Jessica prompted her father again, and found myself losing interest, my eyes wandering to the fence at the edge of the school property. Behind us, Mrs. Whip was quietly laughing as she spoke to Mr. Lynch, the muscular gym teacher who sometimes drove her home after school, and his eyes were practically glued to her own. "I'm heading to use the restroom," I said to Stephen, as I felt my focus falter again, Mrs. Whip's tinkling laugh sounding behind us as other members of the class shuffled to their feet. "I'll probably just join the class behind us so I don't miss anything. If anyone asks, let them know that." "Hey, you can fool them, but you can't fool me," he answered with a wink. "I'd join you, but Mum said I won't get dinner if she catches me skipping again." So I made my way to the restrooms, and from the restrooms out the shattered window in one of the back classrooms that had been on the school repair list since last September. And I walked to something more interesting, something I could only see when I skipped my own lessons around this time. The academy at recess, where I had found the perfect spot high up in a heavily leaved rhododendron tree, where I could just barely see through the vegetation to the other children playing over the fence. Placing a few well-aimed force points towards the outer edges of the tree, I pulled the branches apart just enough to make a small window, just enough for me to have a clear look. Powers, as I could tell from my position, were not to be used at recess under threat of punishment, but it was similar to the busy intersection outside my apartment, viewable from my window. If you watched long enough, something would happen. and I'd spent hours in that tree, waiting, nearly always to be rewarded. Just last week, a skirmish had broken out over a hotly contested game of wiffle ball, the two teams shouting about whether or not the ball had landed across the foul ball line. From my position, I could hear Anthony, the right fielder, being accused.
"He used his powers again, and that's cheating!"
shouted a girl in pigtails, with the bat still in her hand, who made the ground tremor just noticeably when she stomped.
"We should use a heavier ball so he can't just blow it out of bounds."
"Did not," retorted Anthony, a reed of a boy who stood 6 inches taller than anyone else on the team.
"You just can't hit straight, what with the earth never being flat underneath you. Wendy Waddles, everyone calls you because you can't keep your feet straight."
Wendy's jaw tightened as she approached Anthony, and I saw Anthony was indeed correct. Slight depressions or footprints were left in the dirt when she stomped, dirt that should be hard-packed over years of use.
"You take that back," she hissed, "or you'll what?" he teased, sticking out his tongue. "Or I'll do this," she shouted, and stomped as hard as she could where his foot had been an instant before he moved it, fluttering backwards like a piece of paper caught in the wind. Wendy shrieked as her foot crashed through the dirt until her right leg was submerged up to her knee, her eyes flashing with anger. "Get back here!" she shouted,
trying to yank her foot out as teachers rushed to subdue the fight.
"Before I come after you!" "Doesn't look like you can waddle anywhere, Wendy," he taunted back.
From my position, I saw both students were reprimanded with detention slips. It took the teachers 45 minutes to dig Wendy out. The time significantly lengthened when she stomped her other foot in frustration and now had both jammed deep in dirt. And today, I watched closely, trying to determine what would happen next. Too closely, as the voice behind me nearly made me jump out of the tree to the ground 30 feet below.
"I'm no telepath, so I don't know,"
said the voice again, as I searched the branches, trying to find the source.
"But I'd say you probably are an idiot. You should be in school. I wonder what the punishment is for skipping. For us, it's 3 detentions. What's your name?"
Then I found her, floating just outside the branches, a mass of brunette hair with 2 brown eyes that squinted towards me, with nothing holding her up except for her nose looking down on me, and her voice thick with mockery.
"Essie,"
I choked, attempting to recover, and I swallowed, realizing that she wore the same uniform as those playing at recess.